The scent of pine and cinnamon sugar wrapped around the house like a warm blanket, a perfume of pure contentment that I had spent decades perfecting. From my armchair by the fireplace, I watched the flames dance and cast flickering shadows across the room, each one a memory of Christmases past. This was my sanctuary, this home, built not just of wood and brick, but of tradition and love. The laughter echoing from the kitchen was its heartbeat. My son, Marcus, his deep baritone rumbling with a joke, and Keisha's musical laugh that usually answered it, were the twin melodies of my greatest pride. I let my gaze wander over the room. The tree, a towering spruce we had chosen together, glittered with heirloom ornaments that told the story of our family. There was the clumsy popsicle stick reindeer Marcus, made in kindergarten, right next to the delicate glass ball Keisha had brought with her when she joined our family. She had fit so perfectly, as if a piece of our puzzle I had not known was missing had finally slid into place. I loved that woman as if I had birthed her myself. To see Marcus so happy, so settled, with a career that soared and a marriage that seemed built on unshakable bedrock, was the answered prayer of every mother's life. "More eggnog, Mom?" Marcus appeared before me, his face ruddy and smiling, holding out the cut crystal punch bowl my own mother had given me. He looked so like his father in that moment, the same strong jaw and kind eyes, that my heart gave a familiar, bittersweet squeeze. "I would not say no," I said, holding up my cup, "but only a little. That rum you added is potent." "It is Christmas," he said with a wink, pouring a generous serving. "The rules are suspended." I watched him move back towards the kitchen, his easy confidence a balm to my soul. This was the picture. This was the life I had fought for, worked for, prayed for. It was all right here, in this room, on this perfect, snow-dusted morning. And yet, a single, discordant note had been sounding in the back of my mind all day, a faint buzzing I could not quite silence. It was Keisha. She was trying, I would give her that. She had helped me baste the turkey, she had set the table with my good china, but the vibrant energy that usually radiated from her was dimmed. Her laughter, when it came, seemed to require effort, and there was a tiredness around her eyes that even her expertly applied makeup could not completely conceal. I found her standing by the kitchen island, staring out at the backyard where a cardinal had landed on a snow-laden branch. Her shoulders were slightly slumped. "Darling, you look exhausted," I said, coming to stand beside her. I placed a hand on her back. Was the quarter end at the firm truly that brutal? She jumped a little at my touch, then offered me a smile that did not reach her eyes. "It is nothing, Deborah. Do not worry about me, just a long few weeks. It is over now." "It is more than that," I insisted, my maternal instincts on high alert. "You are pale, you barely touched your breakfast. Are you feeling unwell?" She shook her head, turning fully to face me. "I am just tired, I promise. I did not sleep well last night. Too excited for today, I think." She forced another smile. "I will be fine once I have some of your famous turkey in me." I studied her face. This was not the Keisha I knew. The Keisha I knew would have been leading a conga line through the living room by now, telling a story so animated her hands would be flying. This version was quiet, withdrawn, almost fragile. "Well," I said, deciding not to push, "if you are sure, but you know you can tell me anything." "I know," she said softly, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a profound, unspoken worry, before she blinked it away. "I am going to go check on the rolls." She moved away, and I was left with a lingering unease. I told myself it was work stress, just as she had said. The pressure at that law firm was immense, but a small, nagging voice whispered that it was something more. An hour later, the feast was laid out on the dining table, a magnificent spread that was the culmination of 2 days of work. The turkey, golden and gleaming, the mashed potatoes, a cloud of buttery perfection. The air was thick with delicious smells and the happy chatter of family. Keisha, however, was picking at her food, her plate still nearly full. She excused herself quietly, saying she had a bit of a headache. "Oh dear," I said, immediately concerned. "I have some aspirin in my bathroom cabinet. I will get it for you." No, please, Deborah, do not get up," she said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Finish your dinner. I know where it is. I will just run upstairs and get it." She slipped away and the conversation flowed on without her, but I could not let it go. A mother worries. It is what we do. After a few minutes, I decided to check on her. I climbed the stairs, the laughter from below growing fainter. I knocked gently on the door to the guest room where they were staying. "Keisha, darling, are you all right?" There was no answer. I pushed the door open. The room was empty, the ensuite bathroom door ajar. I could hear the faint sound of water running. Her purse was on the dresser, a large, stylish leather bag. The thought occurred to me that she might have her own aspirin in there, something stronger perhaps. If she was in pain, I did not want her to have to search for it. I walked over to the purse, feeling only a slight twinge of guilt at the intrusion. It was an act of care, I told myself. I unclasped the large buckle and peered inside. My fingers brushed against a wallet, a set of keys, a tube of lipstick. I pushed past a small notebook, feeling for a familiar pill bottle. My fingers closed around a small, rectangular object tucked into an inner zippered pocket. It felt like a compact mirror or a name badge. I pulled it out. It was not a compact. The world did not so much as slow down as it simply stopped. The cheerful noises from downstairs vanished, replaced by a roaring silence in my ears. I was holding a white plastic stick. A pregnancy test. And in the little window, clear as day, were two bold pink lines. A grandchild. The thought should have been a thunderclap of joy, a soaring, triumphant feeling that would have had me running down the stairs to hug them both. A grandchild, the continuation of our family, the ultimate blessing. But instead of joy, a cold, sharp dread, colder than the ice outside the window, stabbed deep into my gut. It was a physical sensation, a blow that stole the air from my lungs and made my knees feel weak. Because that single, simple fact, a positive pregnancy test, collided with another darker fact that I carried locked away in the most secret chamber of my heart. A memory, sharp and painful, surfaced with the force of a tidal wave. It was just over a year ago. Marcus had come to me alone, his face uncharacteristically solemn. We had been sitting right here, in this very house, after Keisha had gone to bed. He had leaned forward, his voice low and earnest. "Mom, I need to tell you something. It is a big decision. Keisha and I, we have talked about it for a long time. We love our lives as they are. Our careers are demanding, we love to travel, we just do not think children are for us. I am going to have a vasectomy." He had looked at me, searching my face for disapproval, but I had given him none. It was their life, their choice. I had hugged him and told him I supported them, no matter what. He had made me promise not to tell Keisha he had told me. He said he wanted it to be their private journey. I had agreed. I had locked that secret away, a testament to my son's trust in me. And now I held the proof that his trust, and the entire foundation of his seemingly perfect life, was a lie. The two pink lines blurred before my eyes. Keisha was pregnant. Marcus had a vasectomy. The two facts were irreconcilable. They were impossible. They meant only one thing. The bathroom door opened, and Keisha emerged, her face still damp. She saw me standing by the dresser. She saw what was in my hand. Her eyes, already tired, widened in sheer, unadulterated panic. The color drained from her face completely, leaving her a ghost of herself. We stood frozen in that silent, terrible tableau, the joyous sounds of Christmas morning a cruel mockery from below. The secret was no longer mine alone. It hung in the air between us, a monstrous, unspoken truth. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. All I could do was look at the woman I loved as a daughter and see the devastating proof of her betrayal clutched in my own trembling hand. The world had shrunk to the size of a plastic stick. The faint, impossible second line did not fade. It remained, a stark pink accusation against the white background, a verdict delivered in the sterile quiet of the half-bathroom off the main hall. The sounds of my family, Mom's laughter from the kitchen, the gentle thrum of a Christmas carol from the living room speakers, the clatter of a board game being set up, all of it receded into a dull, muffled roar as if I were submerged in water. My own heartbeat was a frantic drum against my eardrums, a chaotic rhythm that made it difficult to think. Confusion was the first wave, a cold, disorienting splash. How could this be? It was a biological impossibility, a joke in such poor taste that the universe itself would be ashamed to play it. I was 54 years old. My body had long ago closed that particular chapter, the final page turned with a quiet, definitive sigh years ago. A hysterectomy had seen to that, a medical full stop. This test, this cheap piece of plastic from the depths of Keisha's forgotten toiletry bag, was not just wrong, it was a relic. It had to be. It was old, expired, a false positive left over from some other time, some other life. But the dawning horror, a slow creeping chill that started in the pit of my stomach and spread through my veins, whispered a different, more terrifying truth. It was not old. The packaging had been crisp, the seal unbroken, and it was here in my house, hidden away. The math was brutal and inescapable. This test did not belong to me. It belonged to my daughter. My 19-year-old daughter, home from college for the holidays, sleeping just down the hall in her childhood room. I gripped the edge of the vanity, my knuckles turning white. The cheerful porcelain swan soap dish, the plush green towels I had set out for guests, the scent of pine from the candles, every familiar, comforting detail now felt like a prop in a play that had just taken a horrifying turn. I had to get out of this room. I had to paste a smile on my face and walk back into the celebration. I had to be Deborah, the matriarch, the hostess, the mother. But the woman in the mirror had wide, frightened eyes, and her smile was a fragile, trembling thing. I flushed the toilet for the sake of sound, a meaningless gesture, and slipped the test back into its cardboard sleeve. I tucked it into the pocket of my velvet trousers, where it felt like a lead weight, a secret that was burning a hole through the fabric. I took a deep breath, held it, and pushed the door open. The warmth of the house hit me like a wall. The tree glittered, a monument to joy I no longer felt. Marcus was on the floor with Liam, helping him assemble a complex Lego spaceship, his brow furrowed in concentration. He looked up, his face breaking into a warm smile that for my entire adult life had been the anchor of my world. "There you are," he said. "We were about to send a search party. Liam thought you might have fallen in." I forced a laugh, and it sounded brittle to my own ears. "Just freshening up. Do not let him fool you, he just wants someone to find the tiny pieces he drops." I moved toward the kitchen, needing a task, something to do with my hands. My sister Clara was there, leaning against the counter while our mother stirred a pot of gravy. Clara's sharp eyes, the same shade of hazel as mine, tracked my movement. She did not say anything, but I felt her gaze, a silent, probing question. Clara missed nothing. She was my older sister, my lifelong confidant, and her perception was a laser. "Everything all right, Deb?" she asked, her voice low. "You look pale." "I am fine," I said, too quickly. I busied myself with arranging cookies on a platter, my movements jerky. "Just a bit tired from all the excitement. You know how it is." "I do," Clara said, but her tone was flat, unconvinced. She let the subject drop, but I could feel her watching me for the rest of the evening, a silent sentinel of my unraveling. The opportunity came later, after dinner, when Keisha retreated to the sunroom with her phone. The festive lights twinkled around her, casting a soft glow on her face. She looked so young, so innocent, curled up in the wicker chair. My beautiful girl. The weight in my pocket felt heavier than ever. I sat opposite her, my heart hammering against my ribs. "This is nice," I began, my voice unnaturally light. "A quiet moment. College must be so busy. Are you feeling okay? You seem a little quiet." Keisha's eyes flickered up from her screen, a guarded look descending like a shudder. "I am fine, Mom, just relaxing. It is Christmas." "I know, honey. It is just, if there was anything you wanted to talk about, anything at all, you know you can tell me anything." The words felt clumsy and transparent. Her posture stiffened. "What is that supposed to mean? There is nothing to talk about." The defensiveness was instant, a wall shooting up between us. "Why are you always looking for problems?" "I am not looking for problems, Keisha. I am your mother, I worry." I tried to keep my voice soft, but I could hear the strain in it. "I just want to make sure you are taking care of yourself. It is a big time in your life. A lot of changes can happen." She stood up abruptly, the wicker chair creaking in protest. "I said I am fine. Stop it. Just stop hovering." She did not look at me as she brushed past, heading for the stairs. "I am going to bed. Good night." The dismissal was a physical blow. I sat there alone in the twinkling darkness, the silence screaming in my ears. Her reaction was not just that of a moody teenager, it was the panic of someone with a secret too large to hide. I found Marcus in our bedroom, already changing out of his Christmas sweater. The sight of him, the familiar slope of his shoulders, the way he folded his clothes with methodical care, sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. I had to be wrong. I had to be. I closed the door softly behind me. The weight in my pocket was now a pulsating thing. I pulled the test out, holding it in my trembling palm. "Marcus," I said, and my voice was a stranger's, thin and reedy. He turned, a smile still playing on his lips. "What is it, Deb? Did you hide my presence too well again?" I opened my hand. The plastic stick lay there, an obscene offering. The smile vanished from his face. For a fraction of a second, I saw it, a pure, unadulterated panic that widened his eyes and drained the color from his face. It was a look of sheer, gut-wrenching terror. Then, just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a mask of bewildered confusion. "What is that?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "It is a pregnancy test, Marcus." The words hung in the air between us, stark and unbelievable. He let out a short, sharp bark of laughter that held no humor. "What? Deborah, what are you talking about? Is this some kind of joke?" He took a step back, shaking his head. "That is impossible. You know it is impossible." "It is not mine," I whispered, the horror of saying it aloud making my skin crawl. The panic flickered in his eyes again. "Then whose is it? Where did you get it?" His voice was rising, taking on a sharp, angry edge. "This is ridiculous. It must be old. One of Keisha's friends must have left it here years ago. You are not thinking clearly. The stress of the holiday, you are imagining things." He was gaslighting me. The term flashed in my mind, a word I had only ever read in articles. He was looking at me with an expression of genuine concern, as if I were the one who had lost my grip on reality. He reached out and took the test from my hand, his fingers brushing against my palm, a touch that now felt alien and cold. "It is not old, Marcus," I insisted, my voice gaining a shred of strength. "The packaging was new. I found it in our bathroom, in this house." "You are mistaken," he said, his voice final, dismissive. He walked to the ensuite bathroom and I heard the crinkle of cardboard and plastic as he threw it into the trash can. The sound was like a door slamming shut. He came back out, his face a carefully composed mask of calm. "It is nothing. You are tired. Let us just forget about this and go back downstairs. The family is waiting." He moved to put his arm around me, a gesture that had always been a source of comfort, but I flinched away. The air in the room was thick with everything he was not saying. The betrayal was no longer a silent suspicion. It was a festering presence in the space between us, and his dismissive anger was the confirmation I had been desperately hoping not to find. He would not meet my eyes. He simply walked to the door and held it open, waiting for me to join him in the cruel charade, to go back downstairs and pretend that our world had not just cracked open. And I knew, with a certainty that froze the blood in my veins, that the life I had built was a beautiful, elaborate lie, and the man standing in the doorway was a stranger. The silence in my house had become a physical thing, a heavy, cold blanket that smothered the music and the laughter that used to live here. For days, I moved through the rooms like a ghost, the secret burning a hole in my soul. I would look at the family photographs on the wall, Marcus as a gap-toothed boy, his father's strong arm around him, all of us smiling with a future that felt guaranteed, and the image would blur, replaced by the stark, clinical proof I had hidden in my Bible. That little plastic stick was a serpent in my garden, and its venom was spreading through every good memory I had. I could not eat, I could not sleep. The weight of it was cracking my bones. I had to tell someone, or I feared I would simply shatter into a million pieces right there on my polished kitchen floor. And so, I found myself driving to the one place that had always offered sanctuary, the church. Not for a service, but for Sister Clara. She had known me since I was a young woman, had prayed with me through my husband's passing, had celebrated Marcus's graduation. She knew the texture of our family's life. The church was cool and dim, the air smelling of old wood and lemon-scented polish. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting pools of jeweled color on the wooden pews. I found Sister Clara arranging flowers at the altar, her movements slow and graceful. "Deborah," she said, her face softening with immediate concern when she saw me. "Child, you look like you have seen a shadow. Come, sit with me." We settled into the front pew, the quiet of the vast room pressing in on us. I clutched my purse in my lap, my knuckles white. How does one even begin to form such words? "Clara," I started, my voice a dry rustle. "I have discovered something about my son and Keisha." I could not look at her. I stared at the cross hanging above the baptismal font. "I found a pregnancy test. It is positive." Sister Clara placed a warm, weathered hand over mine. "But Deborah, that is wonderful news. A baby is always a blessing from God." "No," I whispered, the word tearing from my throat. You do not understand. Marcus, he had a procedure, a vasectomy, years ago. He told me he never wanted children. The silence that followed was different from the peaceful quiet of before. It was thick with the unspoken horror of my implication. Sister Clara's hand tightened on mine. "Oh, my dear," she said softly, "you think." "What else am I to think?" I cried out, my voice echoing slightly in the hollow of the church. "My son cannot father a child, yet my daughter-in-law is with child. The math of it is cruel and simple." I finally turned to her, my eyes swimming with tears. I have been carrying this knowledge like a stone in my chest. I look at Keisha and I see a stranger. I look at Marcus and I see a man being betrayed. My whole family feels like a lie. Sister Clara was quiet for a long time, her gaze thoughtful. "The heart is a deceitful thing above all else, Deborah. But so is fear. You must be very careful. An accusation like this, it could destroy everything, and if you are wrong, the damage cannot be undone. We must pray for guidance, for the truth to reveal itself in God's time, not ours." Her words were wise, a call for caution, but they also validated the very real, terrifying possibility that had taken root in my mind. She did not dismiss my fear. She saw its size and its danger. We prayed together, my head bowed, the words feeling hollow as they left my lips. All I could see behind my closed eyelids was that positive test. The truth would not wait for God's time. It was festering inside my house, and I was the only one who knew it was there. The confrontation did not happen as I had planned. There was no grand moment I orchestrated. It happened because the truth, it seemed, had a gravity of its own, pulling us all toward a collision. I returned home later that afternoon, my spirit no lighter. The house was quiet, but I heard a faint sound from the kitchen, a hiccuping, ragged breath. I walked in and found Keisha. She was standing by the sink, her back to me, her shoulders shaking. She was crying, trying to stifle the sobs in a dish towel. And something in me broke. The weeks of suspicion, the days of agonizing silence, Sister Clara's caution, it all evaporated in the face of her raw, quiet sorrow. Was it guilt? Was the weight of her secret also crushing her? I did not think. I simply acted. I walked to the kitchen table, my footsteps loud on the tile. I reached into my purse and took it out. I laid the pregnancy test on the wooden table. The little plastic stick with its definitive plus sign was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Keisha turned around. Her eyes were red and puffy, swollen from crying. They went from my face to the object on the table. I watched the color drain from her skin, leaving her a ghost of herself. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Deborah, she stammered, her body trembling. "I know," I said, and my voice was not my own. It was cold and hard, forged in the fire of my heartbreak. "I know you are pregnant, and I know Marcus cannot be the father. I need you to look me in my eye and tell me how this is possible. After everything this family has given you, how could you do this to my son?" For a moment, she just stared at me, a deer frozen in headlights. Then, a strangled sound escaped her lips, and her legs seemed to give way. She collapsed into a chair at the table, the sobs she had been holding back now erupting in a torrent. But they were not sobs of guilt. They were something else entirely, a desperate, anguished release. "You do not understand," she wept, her words tumbling out between gasps for air. "It is not what you think, it is not. Marcus is the father, he is." "That is a biological impossibility," I stated, my voice shaking with fury. "He made sure of it." "No," she cried, looking up at me, her eyes pleading for belief. "He is. We went to a clinic. He begged me, Deborah. He begged me to do it this way." The world tilted. A clinic? The words made no sense. I could only stand there, rigid, as she tried to compose herself enough to speak. "He was so afraid," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "There is a condition, a heart condition. It runs in his family. His father had it, his grandfather. It is a time bomb in his genes," he said. He was terrified of passing it on to a child. The vasectomy, that was his way of making sure it would never happen. He said he could not bear to bring a child into the world who might suffer like that, who might die young. My breath caught in my throat. His father, my husband, he did have a weak heart. He died too young. But Marcus, he never spoke of it like that. It was just a fact of our history, a sadness we carried. "When we got married," Keisha went on, wiping her tears with the back of her hand, "I wanted a family so much. And he wanted one too, but the fear was eating him alive. He could not sleep. Then he read about something artificial insemination, using a donor. He said it was the only way. We could have a baby, a healthy baby with no risk. The secrecy, that was his idea. He was so ashamed. Ashamed? The word was a punch to my gut. Ashamed of what? Of his own blood, Deborah? Keisha's voice broke again. He said he did not want anyone to know, especially not you. He said you would not understand. You are so proud of your family, of your lineage, of the strength of your ancestors. He felt like his own body was a betrayal of all that he was flawed. Broken. He could not stand the thought of you looking at your grandchild and knowing that his own father's blood was a curse. He wanted this baby to be clean, to be free of all that. The room began to spin. The infidelity I had imagined, as painful as it was, would have been a simple wound. A betrayal from outside. This was a devastation from within. My son, my beautiful, strong son, was so ashamed of the blood that ran in his veins, my blood, his father's blood, the blood of the people who fought and survived and built a life from nothing, that he had gone to these extraordinary, clinical lengths to erase it. He saw his heritage not as a source of strength, but as a genetic defect to be hidden away. The life's work I was so proud of, the history I had etched into his soul, meant nothing to him. It was something to be surgically removed from his future. I stumbled back, my hand gripping the edge of the counter for support. The foundation of my world had not just cracked, it had vaporized. I looked at Keisha, truly looked at her, and saw not a betrayer, but another victim of my son's profound shame. And then, from the hallway, we heard the distinct sound of the front door opening. A key turning in the lock. Then Marcus's voice, cheerful and unaware, calling out, "Keisha, Mom, I am home early. I have news." Keisha and I locked eyes across the kitchen, the truth a live wire sparking between us. He was here. He had no idea that his carefully constructed world was lying in shattered pieces at our feet. The silence that followed his call was the most terrifying sound I had ever heard. The silence that followed was heavier than any I have ever known. It was a physical presence, thick and suffocating, pressing down on the dining room table with its festive, untouched bounty. The gravy in the porcelain boat had formed a thin, congealed skin. The candles flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock our stillness. My mother, Deborah, had not moved a muscle since my wife, Keisha, had spoken the words that shattered our world. Her hands were still folded in her lap, but the knuckles were white. She was staring at me, but not really seeing me. She was looking through me into some terrible, painful memory I had just dragged into the present. I could feel the lie, the fortress I had built around myself for years, crumbling into dust inside my chest. There was no air left in the room. Keisha's eyes were wide, glistening with tears she was too shocked to shed, fixed on me with a question so profound it felt like an accusation. All the rehearsed denials, all the clever deflections I had stored for a moment like this, evaporated. There was only the truth, raw and ugly, and it was clawing its way up my throat. I did not mean to make a sound, but a choked, strangled sob escaped me. It was the sound of a dam breaking. My shoulders slumped, and the proud facade of Marcus, the successful man, the reliable husband, the son who had made good, simply dissolved. "It is true," I whispered, and my voice was a stranger's, cracked and broken. "All of it, it is true." I saw Keisha flinch as if I had struck her. She brought a hand to her mouth, stifling a gasp. My mother finally blinked, a slow, pained movement. "Marcus," Keisha's voice was a fragile thread. "What are you saying?" "I never had the test," I said, the words tumbling out now, fueled by a torrent of shame I had dammed up for a decade. "I never took it. I could not. I am a coward." "A coward?" My mother's voice was low, dangerously calm. "You built a life on a lie and you call it cowardice. What is it, Marcus? What could possibly justify this?" I looked at the table, at the perfect golden turkey, at the gleaming silverware that felt like instruments of torture. I could not bear to look at either of them. "It was Dad," I said, my voice gaining a desperate, frantic energy. "I was 12 years old when he died. You remember, Mom, you remember what it did. One day he was coaching my basketball team, laughing, bigger than life, and then he was just gone. A heart attack. A defective gene. A ticking time bomb he did not know he had." My mother's face was a mask of stone. "I remember, I lived it, we lived it, and we survived. We carried on, that is our story." "That is not my story." I slammed my fist on the table, making the china rattle. The sound was shockingly loud in the quiet room. My story was that I was next. Every time I felt a twinge in my chest, Every time I got out of breath running, I thought, this is it. The curse has come for me. I saw the way you looked at me sometimes, Mom, with such fear in your eyes. You were not just looking at your son, you were looking at a ghost of your husband. I turned to Keisha, my eyes pleading for an understanding I knew I did not deserve. And then I met you, Keisha. And for the first time, I wanted a future. I wanted everything. But how could I ask you to marry me? How could I vow to grow old with you when I was convinced I would not see 40? How could I bring a child into this world, my child, and pass on this death sentence? The word hung in the air, vile and final. My mother recoiled as if scalded. A death sentence, she breathed. Is that what you think your father was? Is that what you think our family is? A curse. What else would you call it? I shot back, the years of silent terror giving me a terrible courage. A legacy? What kind of legacy is a guaranteed early grave? I did not want that for myself. I did not want it for my wife, and I sure as hell did not want it for my child. Keisha finally found her voice, and it was trembling with a fury I had never heard. So you decided for me? You took my choice away? You let me plan a future, a family, based on a complete and utter lie? You let me believe we were safe. I did it to keep you safe? I cried, my argument sounding hollow even to my own ears. I did it so you would not have to live with the fear I lived with, so you would not look at me the way my mother looked at my father, with that constant, hidden dread. I could not bear that from you, Keisha. I would rather have you live a happy lie than a fearful truth. A happy lie? She repeated, her voice rising. You think any of this has been happy? The constant pressure to be perfect, your obsession with your health, with your diet? I thought it was discipline. I admired you for it. But it was not discipline, was it? It was fear. It was you trying to cheat a fate you were too scared to face head-on. My mother stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound was like a gunshot. She was looking at me not with anger anymore, but with a grief so profound it seemed to shrink her. All these years, she said, her voice barely a whisper. All these years, I thought I had raised a strong man. I thought I had taught you that what does not kill you makes you stronger. Your father's death was a tragedy, but our survival was a triumph. I wore my resilience like a badge of honor, and I thought I had passed that on to you. But you saw it as a weakness. You saw our history as something shameful, something to be hidden. She took a step toward me, and I saw the tears streaming down her face now, unchecked. You are my son, Marcus. Your life is not a curse. It is a gift. And you have spoiled it with this deceit. You were not protecting them. You were protecting your own pride. You were too ashamed to be vulnerable. Her words landed with the force of a physical blow. They stripped me bare, exposing the pathetic, frightened boy hiding inside the man I had pretended to be. The pride I had clung to, the pride of being the provider, the strong one, evaporated. There was nothing left. I was just a man who had lied to the two people he loved most in the world. I am sorry, I choked out, the words utterly inadequate. I am so sorry. Keisha stood up, wrapping her arms around herself as if she were cold. She looked from my devastated mother to me, broken in my chair. The love in her eyes was at war with a deep, fresh wound of betrayal. Sorry, she said, her voice flat and exhausted. Marcus, sorry does not even begin to cover this. You did not just lie about a test. You built the foundation of our entire life on quicksand. You made me an unwitting accomplice in a fraud against our own future. How can I ever trust you again? She did not wait for an answer. She turned and walked out of the dining room, her footsteps echoing in the hallway before I heard the soft click of our bedroom door closing. The finality of that sound was worse than any shouted insult. My mother looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she walked to the head of the table, to my father's empty chair. She placed a hand on its high, wooden back, a gesture of communion with a ghost I had failed. I need to be alone, she said, not looking at me. I need to figure out how the son I raised could be so afraid of living that he chose to build a life on a lie. And with that, she too left the room, leaving me alone at the table surrounded by the cold, uneaten feast. The Christmas lights on the tree twinkled merrily, a cruel joke. I was alone with the truth I had fought so hard to escape, and it was a more desolate prison than any fear of the future had ever been. The reckoning had come, and it had left nothing standing. I sat there in the crushing silence, wondering if anything could ever be rebuilt from the ruins. The silence in the house after Christmas was a different kind of quiet. It was not the peaceful hush of a holiday morning, but the heavy, fragile stillness that follows a storm. The tree still stood in the corner, its lights unplugged, a ghost of the celebration that had shattered us. Every creak of the floorboards, every clink of a dish, felt amplified. We were all tiptoeing around the crater that had opened up in the center of our family. Marcus had retreated into a shell. He moved through the rooms like a shadow, his eyes avoiding mine, his shoulders permanently slumped with a weight I could almost feel in my own bones. He slept on the couch, though no one had asked him to. The physical distance was a stark map of the emotional chasm between us. It was on the third day, a gray Tuesday, that I found him in the kitchen, staring blankly at the coffee maker as if he had forgotten how it worked. The sight of him, my strong, capable husband, rendered so helpless by his own fear, broke something inside me. It was not a break of anger, but of resolve. "Marcus," I said, my voice soft but firm in the quiet room. He flinched just slightly, as if expecting another blow. "I am making coffee," he stated, a simple fact offered as a defense. "I see that." I moved to stand beside him, not touching him, but close enough that he could feel my presence. "We cannot live like this, tiptoeing around this thing between us." "There is nothing to say, Deborah." His voice was flat empty. "I said what I did, I broke what we had, there is no fixing it." "You are wrong," I said, and the words surprised both of us with their force. "You did not break us. You revealed a crack that was always there, and cracks can be filled. They can be made stronger than the original material, but only if we do the work." He finally turned to look at me, his eyes red-rimmed and full of a despair that stole my breath. "What work? How do you fix a lifetime of hiding? I wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect you. From my family, from the shame, from the weakness. And in doing so, you taught Keisha that our family is built on a foundation of secrets," I said, choosing my words with the care of a surgeon. "You taught her that some things are too ugly to be spoken. That is not the legacy I want for my grandchild. That is not the resilience I have spent my life building." The word resilience seemed to land on him with physical weight. He sagged against the counter. "I am not resilient like you, Deborah. I saw what it did to my mother. I saw how it ground her down. I could not let that happen to Keisha. I could not let her be defined by that struggle." "Marcus, look at me," I commanded, and he did. Defining someone by their struggle is one thing. Allowing that struggle to shape them, to strengthen them, is another. You tried to build a glass castle for Keisha to keep all the pain out, but a castle made of glass will shatter at the first strong wind. We have built a family of brick and mortar. We have withstood storms. This secret of yours, it is just another storm, and we will withstand it too. But we cannot withstand it if you are hiding in the basement, waiting for the roof to cave in." I watched as my words seeped into the cracks of his defenses. I saw the flicker in his eyes, not of hope, but of a terrible, reluctant recognition. He was a man who understood brick and mortar. He was a man who built things to last. "How?" The word was a whisper, a plea. "You start by facing the thing you are most afraid of," I said gently. "Not for Keisha, not for me. For you, you carry this fear like a second skeleton inside you, Marcus. It is time to lay it down." The following weeks were a slow, painful thaw. The first and most difficult step was Marcus finding a therapist. I remember the night he told me, his voice thick with a mixture of shame and determination. "I have an appointment on Thursday," he said, staring at his hands. "It feels indulgent." "It is not indulgence," I told him. "It is the bravest thing you have ever done." Therapy did not fix him overnight. There were nights he would come home and retreat into a sullen silence, the sessions stirring up sediment that had settled deep within him for decades. There were moments of anger, of grief for the boy he had been, for the father he had lost to his own demons. I learned to simply be present, to listen when he needed to talk, to give him space when he needed to process. It was a delicate dance, and we stepped on each other's toes more than once. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, a change began. He started sleeping in our bed again. The haunted look in his eyes began to recede, replaced by a weary but genuine clarity. He began to talk about his father, not as a monster, but as a flawed, broken man who had been crushed by the very system Marcus had fought so hard to shield Keisha from. He was learning to accept his own history, not as a stain to be hidden, but as a part of the tapestry that made him who he was. Months drifted by, winter giving way to a tentative spring. The real test, we both knew, would be Keisha. Their conversations were still stilted, careful. The trust that had been a given was now a sapling that needed careful tending. Then came the invitation to her baby shower. The air in Keisha's sunlit apartment was thick with the scent of flowers and the warm, sugary smell of cake. It was filled with laughter and the chatter of her friends, a vibrant, joyful noise. Marcus stood beside me, his hand finding mine, his grip firm. I could feel the tension radiating from him. This was his first real public appearance since Christmas, his first time facing Keisha's entire world. Keisha was radiant. Her baby bump was a proud curve beneath her flowing dress, and her smile, when it landed on us, was cautious but warm. She had chosen a theme of new beginnings, and the irony was not lost on any of us. The gift-opening portion of the afternoon arrived, a chaotic, happy ritual of tiny clothes and soft toys. Then Keisha picked up our gift, a large, flat package. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing the quilt I had spent every evening of the past 3 months piecing together. It was a mosaic of fabrics, scraps from Keisha's childhood dresses, a piece from one of Marcus's old work shirts, a swatch from the curtain fabric in our first apartment. It was a history, stitched together with love. But it was what Keisha did next that stole the breath from the room. She unfolded the quilt completely, and there, sewn into the very center, was a small, faded square of fabric I had never seen before. It was a deep, worn blue. Keisha looked directly at Marcus, her eyes glistening. "Dad," she said, her voice clear and strong, carrying over the chatter, which had suddenly stilled. "I found this in a box of your old things. Mom told me you might need to see it again." Marcus froze. I felt his hand go limp in mine. He stared at that square of blue cloth as if it were a ghost. "It is from your father's uniform, is it not?" Keisha asked softly. "From his time as a janitor at the school, the job he worked for 20 years. A single tear traced a path down Marcus's cheek. He did not wipe it away. He simply nodded, his throat working soundlessly. The room was utterly silent, every woman holding her breath. Keisha held the quilt out to him. "This child," she said, placing a hand on her stomach, "will know all of his grandfathers. The one who built a life with his hands, and the one who built a life despite his past. This child will be raised in the light, Dad, all of it." It was the moment the fracture began to heal, not with a scar that would hide the break, but with a golden seam of kintsugi, more beautiful for having been broken. Marcus took the quilt, his fingers trembling as they traced the blue square. He looked from Keisha to me, and in his eyes I saw not fear, but a profound, hard-won peace. Later, as the party began to wind down, I held a tiny, impossibly soft onesie that someone had gifted, imagining the baby who would soon wear it. I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated joy. This child would never know the shadow of our secret. It would only know the light we had fought so hard to find. But as I watched Marcus across the room, gently folding the quilt with a reverence that bordered on prayer, a cold, quiet thought whispered at the edge of my happiness. The past was laid to rest, but the future was an unwritten page. And I could not shake the feeling that our hardest test was not behind us, but waiting, silently, for its moment to begin.